Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to go ahead and get started. And if anybody joins late or misses out, um, this is going to be recorded, and I will send an email kind of showing you where that is. So I'm Nate Campbell, and I started the Local Beef podcast with the goal of really connecting consumers with their local beef producers. And a big part of why I did that is for the last 10 years, my focus has been on agriculture. And the first six of that, we were living the life. Um, Basically, we tried to start a ranch, then moved to our family ranch, sold grass finished beef. And when that business failed, I went back to my 9 to 5 that I had left. And that's kind of where I am now, kind of for the last 4 years. Our family moved from Eastern Oregon up to Montana, and I've spent the last 4 years really kind of diving into exactly how I can best help farmers and ranchers. And this is it. My kind of first big leap into it is the Local Beef podcast. And really, the reason behind the Local Beef podcast is to share that story. Um, our personal story with the Campbell family kind of it didn't end, but we're selling the ranch that I grew up loving, that my grandpa Tom was on since 1951, up until my brother took it over about 10 years ago. And my grandpa Tom was one of the best storytellers you'd ever meet. Like anybody in Eastern Oregon knew Tom Campbell because he just had that ability to share and tell a story. And the sad part is nobody told his story. Nobody, and we never wrote books. I mean, he there's no books about him. There's no videos, few videos. And really it's just the stories we've heard from each other that are passed on. And part of this is me being kind of curious and wanting to share my own family's story and record that for my kids and their kids and so on. But also, I know that there's so many other Tom Campbells out there who have lived these amazing lives that nobody knows about. And I think with this podcast, we can not only share those stories, but help keep those farms and ranches going, and the people that are working behind the scenes um, thriving, right? Such a, I think we all know it's just a broken system. But a little bit more about me is I've started working remote since in 2015, and it's kind of one of the reasons I like this Zoom platform, right? Like, um, I've I've been doing Zooms like this forever, so um, I guess for the last 10 years. So it's easy for me to just hop on here. For myself personally, it's a good accountability on a Saturday morning to get up and work on the business, but also to provide value to all of you. I know how isolating it is to be working on a farm or ranch, and it's really um, it can be really challenging to not have a community. Um, I remember growing up as a kid, and where our family ranch was in Kimberly. It's an unincorporated town, but it's next to 6, 7 miles from another town that's 100 and some people. And when I was a kid, we would go probably every 3 months or so. We'd go to town, and they're big community park, and they have potlucks. And in the winter, obviously they didn't really do it there, but it was more of like it still continued. It was at the senior center, and it was in a building that's similar to a Grange Hall, and that was what kept that community thriving, I felt like. And when my wife and I moved back to that community in 2017, that was gone, right? Like everybody's interacting in a different way. And, this isn't that, right? Like this isn't a community potluck, but this is my attempt to do that for all the people who kind of come into my circle who are um, beef producers. So really, it's kind of the whole purpose of this is we'll start out same way as this. I'm just going to introduce myself briefly, welcome any new members, and then going to go into more of like one strategy or course concept that either I've learned through my life in ag or from something that one of you have provided to me. And then I'll have a brief introduction of anyone who wants to, say hi to the group. And then with that, a Q&A of just, and it doesn't have to be a question directed at me. Like I said, this is meant to be more of a community where we're working together to help each other with the things that we're struggling with. And so in that Q&A, we can definitely, it can be about the podcast, it can be about the strategy I shared, or it can just be about, how something that either you're struggling with or just even something more positive that you want to share to encourage others, you know. And so with that, I'll go ahead and go into the strategy for today. Um, I I'm a person who looks more into the future than to the past. And so if I'm in the middle of something like when we were growing our grass-fed beef business, I didn't reflect on the direction that we were going and the things that I'd already learned. And there's there's a lot of value in that, and I learned all like that taught me to do that. Just to stop, pause, and do that kind of more on a consistent basis, weekly or monthly basis. And what happened with our beef business is it grew too quickly, I'm going to say, and I didn't know that that was possible until it happened. Um, so long story short, um, we were selling beef direct to consumer, kind of driving with freezers in a trailer behind our pickup and driving around the state of Oregon delivering beef. And we did that for quite a while. And I think that was a really good system. It was nice to meet everyone face to face. I ended up having some other marketing strategies with it to where I would deliver them their order, and I've got it somewhere. I'll share it next week. But I had a clipboard. On the back of the clipboard, it's just three offers, right? Like, do you want the when I have like a names for them? It was like a barbecue bundle, a burger bundle, and maybe it was like a roast bundle, something like that. I had, I think, three different things on there. They're all about $100, and beef was cheaper then. They're all about $100, and it was just an easy, they call it like upsell for me to, as I'm delivering their beef, just ask, and a lot of them said yes. So that was going well. I felt like when I was doing that, um, that was something that was sustainable. I moved it into something that wasn't. And part of that is, I mean, I take full responsibility for what happened. But things led to it happening. One of those things is we hired a marketing consultant, and to help grow, one of the things he recommended was shipping. And it made sense. We'd done some home deliveries. A lot of the how we started was driving around the state, and then we had central meetup spots as we did that. Because we're heading off. We're gonna have a 3-hour drive that night, so we didn't have time to really go and talk and go to someone's house that much. Um, so when we did the home deliveries, I learned how challenging that is. Like I'd get this app to where it told me like here are the places that you need to go. And it was a city of 100,000 people of Bend, Oregon. So it's like not big. But we had 20 or 30 deliveries. And it took me something like 10, I don't know, 8 or 10 hours, right, to just drive around this town and drop off all these deliveries. And then also like, people are inviting me into their house, and, you know, it's like, we have interesting stories. So it's, they wanted to talk and I wanted to share. Um, but after doing that, it's like, okay, maybe we are at the point where we need to ship. And I think what I needed at that time was not a consultant, but a mentor. And I had I had found that previously, but like I said, I didn't look back, reflect. It was more of, okay, what's the best path forward to continue kind of growing this business? And the mentors that I'd found obviously were different authors. One of them being Joel Salatin, and um, another one being marketing person Charlotte Smith. So, gosh, it was about the time we started selling beef. Not very, like, just a few months in. My wife and I think she got it, the tickets for this for my anniversary, or like an anniversary gift to me. Um, but at Charlotte Smith's farm in St. Paul, Oregon, she had an event. I think it was probably like 50 people came. And Joel Salatin was the main speaker. And then she was going to speak. And then there was another gal, I can't remember her name, but um, she was more of an attorney, and she was helping a lot of people understand the laws behind raw milk. Because that's Charlotte, if you're not familiar with Charlotte Smith, um, her core business is more of a dairy business and raw milk business. But she helps others with lots of other farming things. And the thing that she discussed and talked about, like she talked about a lot of things. The one that I missed was how important it is to know who you're helping, who you're working with, who is your customer avatar. And later I've been calling that dream customer. So that's kind of in our discussions or in these Zooms or here for me, that's more of the term that I'll use is the who's my dream customer and who's your dream customer. And um, you know, she it was one of those things where she mentioned it, its importance. I think I'd even written it down, but for whatever reason, I didn't take the actions that she suggested. And that's basically just go home, sit down with a notebook, and determine who it is you want to work with. Just write it out. And looking back, reflecting on our business, it's absolutely so clear, right, that I hadn't focused on that. Um, it was all about growth and fast growth, which we did. 6 month period, we sold over $100,000 in ground and grass beef. grass-fed beef. And I grew our email list to over 1,000 customers, and um and 30, I think we had 30,000 subscribers. And when I reflected back, it was like, well, yeah, that it, clearly it grew quickly. But there were conversations I would have probably weekly, letting consumers know that we didn't accept food stamps. And that was that's a lot of, you know, people's um, core business. But one, I hadn't, you know, priced things appropriately, especially with shipping. But two, I was not attracting the customer who really we should have been attracting with a premium, you know, beef home delivery service. And that's the thing that, I once I made that aha, spent a lot of time really reflecting on that and, working through it and trying to make sure that I was very specific when I kind of launched my next business, and who I wanted to help and who I wanted to work with. And mm, there is, I'll be honest with you, there's a very specific reason that I reached out to you. Um, and it's also a reason why I'm not rushing into like social media and other things to help grow this podcast. And things like that is I want to learn from my listeners, my audience, as well as the beef producers, and understand really who that person, that dream customer, who they are and how I can best serve them. Because there's like, it's different to write it down, right? And be like, okay, so this is who I want to help. And then once you know them, or know who you don't want to serve, and who you want to say no to, then things start to become really clear. And it's one of those it's one of those situations where, to me, the best way to function for a business is to always know who that person is. And then that leads to all the decisions that you make, and it makes things easy. A good example of that is social media or podcast, whatever platform you have, if it's email newsletters, a blog, YouTube videos, however you're sharing your story and, trying to grow your business, that will be 1,000 times easier when you've done this work and you know that you know who they are. Even in their conversations back and forth with them, you know what their values are, and uh, those are the topics that you discuss. Um, so, um, with typically, I right now kind of jump into the Farmer Rancher intros and Q&A. Currently, it's just me, so I'm gonna keep going through this, and then I'm gonna send this out to email to everyone who wasn't able to join today. And it'd be great if you can respond with just some of your questions, and things like that. Or feel free to wait until a future meeting. I don't really like meeting. Future get together. um, I have meetings all day long, so I don't want that to be one of those. So yeah, if you want to respond and aren't able to join these, I'd love to use next week's Q&A session to answer any email Q&As that I've got. And then, yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and actually share my screen. Okay. All right. So what I'm sharing here is my dream customer for the listener of our podcast, Sarah Britt. Sarah is a random name, but Britt to me is special. My grandpa's best friend, Leroy Britt, is actually at his ranch is the first memory that I have. We went over to feed cattle and it had snowed, and him and his wife Diane and my grandpa Todd and Debbie, we all went out and we're doing everything to load the hay and get ready to go feed. And my step grandma Debbie, she's like, let's build some or do some snow angels. And we, laid down on the ground, and my brother and I and her, and did snow angels. And it was just really special memory for me for, a lot of reasons. But Leroy, he was cowboy, right? Like he's just really a great, unique individual. And he had actually grown a logging business that helped him buy ranch. So he's first generation cattle rancher. And he had, just a beautiful, very, very big property. He'd done pretty well in the logging business. And this was in the 80s. Actually, I think he bought it in the 70s, but yeah. So he, he died on a horse with his wife. They were out gathering cattle, just the two of them, and him and his horse were struck by lightning. And our family has his saddle, and he's just a really important person to my grandpa. And so I have that connection, with Sarah, just from my own, like I did that, right? Like I named her someone that was important in my life. So I'm not zooming in, and I wanted to say that I think in Excel, like the job that I do 9 to 5 or 6 to 3, I work out of New York, is it's called project controls, but I help manage budgets and schedules for major projects. And so I'm used to working in Excel, and I think in Excel a lot. So I'd written all of this out in a Word document and then categorized it in here. And so what you see, the grays, these are more things that like tell the abouts, I guess, for Sarah. So this is like the evolution of her journey, like what happened, and this is her beef journey, right? So like, what was her first real experience that kind of mattered for this business? Well, in college, she got her first cow share. And it was her boyfriend's family connection that hooked him up. And so, like, just those kinds of things. Next, early in her career, she had budget constraints, and that's when she went kind of back to the grocery store. And so it's just those different, like, and there's, what do we have here? 5 or 6? Yeah, there's not very many of those key moments in her life. Like one of them's the, kids being born, and just different times in their lives when they make those big different buying decisions. And they're what I've learned about marketing, they're really infrequent when people do make those major changes in buying decisions. And baby, that's one of the big ones. COVID was another one. And that's kind of what part of the mission of this podcast to do is to be that paradigm shift to help the Sarahs of the world change what they're doing. So currently she gets her beef from Butcher Box, right? And she doesn't feel great about it. So that's more feeling great about it. That's all of this green. So this last piece here, what is Sarah's buying type? So Sarah is an emotional buyer. So that's why I have so much green, is green on all of this is emotion. Blue is logic. And so most people, they're either going to buy emotionally or they're going to buy logically. What that means is you're really, as you're defining your dream customer, you're really trying to understand, like, I think that is a foundational piece of it, right? The buying type. And if someone is not an emotional buyer, they want to know the facts about it, right? Like I would be sharing things about, like, if we're promoting grass finished beef, I'm going to share, the metric tons of carbon emissions that are like impacted by doing a regenerative practice, to where all of that carbon goes into the soil and it's doing things to help save the planet. Very logical. Okay, so I'm buying this and I'm saving the planet. Emotions don't work the same way. As if I keep buying this product from a store or butcher box or wherever, if I keep buying this, we could have a farm or ranch fail and a family lose their livelihood, and everything, all their dreams and hopes are gone, and everything that they've been striving for so long is gone. And I have an opportunity to help with them continuing their legacy. And my kids can go and visit that farm or ranch, and I can have them interested and curious about this whole new world that I feel like is really important, because it's our food system, right? Like, and we're, especially as parents, like, we're isolating ourselves to cities so much that we don't really get that experience anymore with our kids. And so I hope that helps paint the picture of kind of more of the emotional versus logical. And it's one of the reasons these gray areas on here are so important. I'm not going to go deep, and it would take me a long time to walk through each one of these. But in a future session, I'm gonna go into them, and what I think I'll do is just kind of one by one go through the different categories. And if you're curious and you want to have like kind of a better look, a better view of this, or just to see it, I'll be happy to share. But I think the main thing with it isn't so much what's written, and the categories are definitely helpful, but it's that mind frame. Because if we think about those two, logical and emotional sides of things, and you're writing a weekly email newsletter, and that, like, your dream customer is an emotional buyer, not a logical buyer, you're going to share a lot more emotion and storytelling and, the things that go with emotion. You're going to share your story and your struggles and your victories, and you're going to open up your farm or ranch to having people come, and you'll show them different things about more of the why than the what. With the logical buyers, it's going to be more of the what, right? Like, um, it's, if you like, drones showing, like, here's our operation, and over here we've got, like, the a paddock where the cattle are, and tomorrow we're going to move them down here, and the reason we do that is going into all of those details. So that's, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. um and my plan for these is 30 minutes, and we've hit that. And so I'm gonna stop this recording. But like I said, please do, reach out to me. Don't feel like you need to be in, um stop sharing. Don't feel like you need to show up every day. I'm gonna show up every day and keep doing this, whether we have just myself or we have 100 or 1,000 members in here. Like, it's all the same to me, because I know how busy your lives are, and I think it's much easier to, when you have time, pause and watch the recording than meet my schedule. So again, welcome, and thank you for being here. Looking forward to kind of meeting you a little bit more face to face in one of these in the future. But yeah, so that's it for now, and have a great weekend. If you haven't already checked out my podcast, go ahead, jump over there. It's localbeefpodcast.com, or you can search any podcast platform for the Local Beef Podcast. It goes into a lot more about my story. The setup for the podcast, I didn't go into that, meant to. Setup for this podcast is kind of the season one is more of the foundational type things of, really, more of that blue, right? More of the logical, like, why should you buy from a local farm or ranch? And it goes into more of the secrets behind what Big Ag is doing, and why it's so important for our local communities. And of course, I have a lot of emotional things in there, raised a lot of emotions, but that's kind of season one. Season two and on is more of a regional focus, telling the stories of all the beef producers in that region. And I live in Montana, so we're starting in the Mountain West, and that's probably where you're from. And that, my goal for that is to kind of begin those stories in April. And so, yeah, look forward to um, getting to know you guys, and have a great weekend. Thanks for joining.